Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Disengagement, the Real Safety Hazard. This event is brought to you by ISHN Magazine and is sponsored by All-Star Incentive Marketing. I'm your moderator, Dave Johnson, editor of ISHN. Thanks for joining us today. Today, our presenter is Brian Galonick. Brian is the president of All-Star Incentive Marketing, a company that has been helping its clients better engage with their employees and customers for more than 40 years. Brian is actively involved in the safety industry as a longstanding member of ASSE and a frequent writer and presenter at safety-related industry events. Brian is also actively involved in the Incentive Marketing Association and was one of the first in the country to earn the Certified Professional of Incentive Management distinction. Brian has also served as both the education chairman and president of the Incentive Technology Council, and he's currently an active member of both the Incentive Federation and the Incentive Engagement and Solution Providers, which is a strategic industry group within the Incentive Marketing Association. Now, don't forget during Brian's presentation to submit your questions that come to you as Brian discusses engagement. And then during the Q&A that will follow Brian's presentation, Brian will address as many questions as you submit as time permits. Today's event is being recorded and archived on www.ishn.com. And now, I am excited to turn it over to our presenter today, Brian Galonick. Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Dave, and welcome everybody. Welcome to today's presentation, Disengagement, the Real Safety Hazard. Before I start, I just want to give a shout out to everybody in Texas and Florida. I know we probably all have family and friends and coworkers there, and we all feel for them and what they're going through, and I just want to wish them the best of luck. I'm going to jump right in here and try to quickly give you some feedback as to what I think you need to know regarding engagement. Before I do, I want you guys to get engaged if you can, please. That's why my picture's on screen. We are going to pull an award winner later in the presentation. That person is going to win themselves a Sony TV and a Roku stick. And in order to win that Sony TV or Roku stick, you need to be both on the presentation and engaged. And if you're wondering how we're going to know if you're engaged or not, we have our ways. But I will tell you this, it's time to stop sending those emails. I've been on a lot of webinars before too, where you keep sending emails. You over there, I see you checking your phone, your fantasy football scores. Stop doing that. The Vikings won, the Broncos won. Kareem Hunt from Kansas City put up a ton of points against my Patriots. All that's yesterday and this past weekend. It's time to engage in this webinar itself, okay? All-Star Incentive Marketing, our story. We've been around for 45 years. This is what we do. What we do is help companies figure out how to engage with the people behind their success, their workers, their customers. I personally have been doing this, and this is painful to say, for 29 years. And really, we are a consultative solution provider. We're a cause and effect type of a company. Many of my customers know or think they know what the problem is. And when we dig in a little bit deeper, we can really dig down and find out what it actually is. And more often than not, it leads to engagement. And that's the reason for this presentation today. The agenda is pretty simple. We're going to talk about the mystery that is engagement. Then I'm going to give you some facts and figures. We're going to talk about obstacles and then opportunities to engage, and talk about safety's need to lead the way in the engagement process. And at the end, or actually throughout the course of the presentation, we're going to have a couple of survey questions. In fact, our first one's coming up here just shortly. And those survey results will be available to you online as well. I think you'll find those very helpful because it'll tell you how your coworkers, your fellow safety professionals feel about these same issues. And there are 600 or 700 people registered for today's webinar, so we're going to have a good crowd, which means you're going to get statistically significant data back in the survey results we show you. So the engagement mystery. Engagement itself is sort of that hidden thing in between everything else that's out there, right? You have training and wellness and BBO and VPP, and just take your pick. Personal protective equipment and injury prevention policies and OSHA regulations. And somewhere in all of that, you need to try to figure out how your workforce is engaged or how engaged they are. And it's something of a mystery. And we're here to help solve that mystery today. So here's the way I kind of boil it down. you can't easily see it, right? I mean, how do you see engagement? You might feel like you can see somebody who is engaged, but how do you actually see engagement? It can't be easily described, sort of like the taste of milk, right? What is engagement? You don't know exactly where to find it. You're not sure exactly how much of it you already have, and you don't even know why you so desperately need more of it. But somehow, some way, you and hundreds of your fellow safety professionals have shown up today for a webinar for exactly that reason. It's mysterious, it's out there, and you know you need to be able to see where it's coming from and how to get more of it. I can tell you that we also attend other trade shows like SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Managers, and human resource managers and operational professionals and everyone else out there is trying to find the same thing. They're trying to find that the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which is employee engagement. So here's your first survey question. And I can ask you just to click on the answer that best describes what you've perceived to be your the level of engagement for your safety sensitive workers. So it's a bit esoteric, of course, but thinking about your safety crowd, thinking about your workers, and just in general, your read on how engaged they are at work, give us an answer. You got 5 choices here. I'm going to drag my feet for about 10 seconds or so while the answers come in, and I can see them pouring in quickly, so thank you. 0 to 19%, 20 to 39, and climbing the ladder all the way up to 80 to 100%. On average, looking at your crew, looking at your workers, about what percentage of them do you think are engaged in their daily job? A couple more seconds here, and then I'll push the results. I think that'll about take care of it. And if you're still answering the question, you can go ahead and do so. When we're done with the webinar and we send out a copy of this webinar to anybody who's interested and we post it online, we will post it with the results of these surveys. So you'll be able to see alongside the slides how people answer this question. So here's where we're at. About 40 to 30% of you, 29% of you think 40 to 59% of your workforce is engaged at work. Another 20% say 60 to 79, and 9% say it's 80 to 100. So, and then obviously the biggest category is that 20 to 39%. I feel like, I know for a fact, I've done these webinars many times, and I've done questions like this before, and I think the word's getting out, because I can tell you that in past webinars, we didn't necessarily get the answer to 20 to 39% was the most popular answer. However, that said, if you add up everything from 40 on up, you've got about 58% of you think that 40 to 100% of your workforce is engaged. Okay. Now, is it feasible for your company specifically? Sure. I don't know exactly. I don't know. I know there's a lot of companies on the line, and I can look up who they are. Maybe yours is better than most, but if you're like the average company out there, you might be overstating that. And that we'll dig into here a little bit in the facts and figures. So, State of the American Workplace. This is a study by Gallup. It's been out there for decades now. They've surveyed literally hundreds of millions of people over those years, and the results are always the same. They might fluctuate up or down a percentage or two from year to year, but essentially this is what it reflects, and it's fairly dire, or at least it's a challenge for those of us that want to make our workplaces safer and know we need an engaged workforce to do it. What this shows is about 30% of U.S. workers are engaged. And again, the results of what we just surveyed here tell me that that word is getting out there to the safety professionals, I think more so than in the past. People get that. About 50% of U.S. workers are not engaged. Doesn't mean they're bad workers, certainly doesn't mean they're bad people, but they're not necessarily engaged on the job. And while they can do good work, they can't perform as high as they would if they were truly engaged. And 20% of your workers, on average, are actively disengaged. And these are the people who, frankly, probably should be fired yesterday, assuming you could find somebody to replace them. But they're actively disengaged. They don't care. They're not interested in what you have to teach them or tell them. And that's true about safety or about performance or about any other aspect of their job. So they're a real challenge. But what we're really hoping to do here, as much as anything, is to move that middle 50%, if you will. Try to get that group that can truly perform at a higher level, at a safer level, to do better work and better and safer work by getting them to pay attention more. Disengaged workers cost the U.S. economy about $500 billion a year. No small number. And here's the thing that's really daunting. One of the things that's really daunting: millennials are the most disengaged. This is now being borne out in study after study after study. So they're the ones piling into the workforce. They're the largest part of the workforce, and they're the most disengaged group. And they're unique, and we'll talk more about them in a minute. Why is it so important? Engaged teams of workers have 50% fewer accidents, 41% fewer quality defects, incur far less than healthcare costs. They last longer, turnover's lower, lower absenteeism, shrinkage, what have you. across the board, engaged workforce performs better and is better for the company as a whole. This speaks to that, what I was just talking about, millennials. That line that's ascending is the millennial workforce. This data is actually about a year and a half old, but that's 53.5 million workers, the most in the workforce. The most up-to-date numbers, of course, show that line continuing to climb. The line on the top there, the orange baby boomer line, is beginning its decline, and it's going to rapidly accelerate. 10,000 or so boomers retire a day. So we're replacing a lot of 65-year-olds with 30-year-olds, and we need to know what that means for everything, including our ability to make them safer on the job. In fact, even if you start to look at the most recent numbers on Gen Xers, those are starting to decline. Now, I'm 51 years old, technically a Gen Xer by a little bit, and I already see those numbers starting to go down. It makes me wonder if some 50-year-olds out there are already starting to retire. I'm a little jealous, but the bottom line is the only group that's increasing right now are the millennials. And here's an unemployment chart. We know there's a lot of different measures of unemployment. You hear about it in all the political discussions every single night. But no matter how you measure it, it's been measured the same way for years. And 4.4% is the current listed unemployment rate. We are basically fully employed, or pretty damn close to it. And so even if you look at the second blue bar there, I'm sorry, if you look at the broad unemployment rate there, that one now has dropped below 9% as well. Okay, so the underemployed rate as well. So the bottom line is most people that are looking for a job have one, and it puts a premium on holding on to the people you have. They're more important than ever, especially if they're safe on the job, or they can be safe on the job, or they're already trained. You don't want to lose them. A lot of great stats out there. Your HR department will tell you this as well. Cost 25 to 400%. It's a pretty broad range, but 25 to 400% to replace a worker that's already been trained and on the job. Even if you just use the 25% number, and even if you just talk about a $40,000 a year worker, it costs you 10 grand to replace that person when you add up all the hard costs and soft costs. So we don't want to lose them, especially if they're trained, especially if they're safe. And the best way to make sure we don't lose them, the greatest way to hold on to your engaged workers is through recognition, right? Recognition is equal, on par, if sometimes even ahead of compensation in terms of the number one reason why people will stay on their job. If they feel like they're being recognized for a job well done, they'll stick around. And safety has a unique way of actually doing that for the company as a whole, of producing greater levels of retention because recognition is delivered in a safety environment. And that's a lot of what the rest of this presentation will be about. This kind of brings the point home here as well. So if you're in the top 25% of engaged companies, again, think about that Gallup poll. Think about the questions they ask. The questions they ask, by the way, are along the lines of somebody at work cares about my opinion. I've received, in the last 6 months, I've received recognition for a job well done. Those types of questions, those are the part of the 12 questions that are out there, are what people are looking at and responding to. And it's the answers to those questions that allow the company, Gallup, to basically put people into one of four quartiles. The group that's in the top 25% of most highly engaged people, they're the ones that actually, showing up on the right-hand side of the page here, they're the ones that actually make the company more profitable. So if you're in that top 25%, you have a profitability that's growing by 22%. You have productivity that's going up by 21% on average. You have customer retention that's going up by 10% on average. Those are pretty good numbers. We'll come back to how you can use those to get funding for the types of programs you want to do in a little bit. On the other side of the chart, you've got absenteeism, 37% higher in companies with low levels of engagement. Turnover much higher in companies, regardless of whether you're in a high turnover or a low turnover industry. It's much worse when you're in a situation where you have a disengaged workforce. Shrinkage is higher, and of course, safety. Safety incidents are much higher, dramatically higher, and same problem with wellness in companies that have disengaged workforce. The connection between the two is pretty much 100% correlated to how engaged your workforce is. All right, second survey question. How engaged is management? We just talked about your employees, got your results. How engaged is management in your safety objectives and initiatives? If you can take a look and just kind of, again, search the meetings you've had with supervisors, with executive vice presidents, with your boss, with owners of the company, based on your read, how engaged do you feel this management team is? Oh, I think we just toggled forward a slide. Thank you. So would you say they're totally disengaged? Are they somewhat disengaged? Neutral, meaning you feel they're sort of average? or are they somewhat engaged or totally engaged? Again, looking at managers, supervisors, vice presidents, and higher ups in your company, how engaged do you think they are in what you're trying to do in safety? And how in tune are they with your objectives and the message that you're sending them as to why it's so important? Again, I see the answers coming in here. Thank you. A lot of people quickly answering. I'm going to give it another 10 seconds and then push it out to you. That looks pretty good. Okay. So I got to go back, I think, to get to that one. There you go. So somewhat engaged is far and away the leader. Good news. And to the 7% of you that feel like your management, senior management team, if you will, the people you report to are totally engaged, that's fantastic. If you have a totally engaged group of management staff that you have to work with to get something done, you should be in a really good place to go get that work done. And for those of you that are neutral to, let's say, the 31% of you that feel like your managers are disengaged, obviously very important to try to find ways to get them engaged. And even for the somewhat engaged management teams, really important if you want to get done what you want to achieve, to try to get them much more thoroughly engaged. Make sure they're on board. And we're going to talk about how to have shared common ground that they're going to want to sink their teeth into as well. That should get them there. So let's talk about engagement obstacles. Sort of just alluded to the first one, right? Lack of management input and support. I'm going to come back to that in a minute, in a couple of slides. So I'll pass over it for now. And same thing with the next one, regulatory. I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. So for the moment, it can be an obstacle, but I'll come back and we'll talk about why. The other one is cash or cash-like incentives and awards, right? So we're talking about recognition. We're talking about recognition oftentimes delivered in the context of a rewards program. And in many cases, particularly the further back you go, you find that those reward programs were using cash as the main vehicle as the award, or something very cash-like, like a gas card, a gift card, some sort of prepaid card. And I can tell you that, and I know many of you have probably heard this before, so bear with me for another 20 seconds here. People believe it, I think, sort of. I think some people wholly believe it, other people partially believe it. I think some people really challenge it. I know they do, because for many, many years I go to trade shows and talk to clients, and they say, no, cash is what everybody wants. Cash is king. Cash is what people want. I can tell you it's what I want too. It's probably what you want. I'm sure it is. When my credit card company gives me the ability to redeem my points for cash, I'll redeem them for cash, generally speaking. But that's not what they want. What you want. What you want is an engaged workforce, and what you want is a safety-sensitive worker to remember that he's being recognized and rewarded for doing good work. And cash doesn't work, and neither does that Home Depot gift card or that gas card or that prepaid card or what have you. It can't be easily forgettable. Otherwise, if it is, it's not very valuable to you. Somebody in the next 20 minutes or so is going to have the name pulled out of a hat, and they're going to win a Sony TV. And I promise you, if you chase that person down in 6 or 7 years and I say, where'd you get that Sony TV? They're going to say, oh, I won it as an attendee for a safety webinar. They're going to be able to connect the award to the action that actually took place. That's it. That's ball game over. If I gave them a couple $100 in cash and I asked them 6 years later what they did, if I asked them 6 days later what they did with it, they probably wouldn't know, right? So you as the employer have a specific need. As long as you give them a lot of really, really good, tangible brand name merchandise to choose from and travel awards, you will have an audience that is fully engaged, that remembers why they were rewarded, and it comes back and repeats that same behavior, which is what you're looking for. Next one here is lack of patience. I put this one down as an obstacle simply because I've seen companies over the years go through all the hard lifting, heavy lifting of creating a program, and then somehow, some way, shortly after launching the program, lose patience. And 3 months after they launch a program, say, oh, the incident rate isn't coming down, severity isn't coming down yet. Once these programs are built, they take a little bit of time. And as I say right there in the slide, it's the investment, and then it's the return. Okay, your return on investment will come, but once you get it out the door, you have to give it time. Incident rates will come down. Eventually, severity will come down. Lost picks will be reduced. Incidents will be reduced, and what have you. But one follows the other. You got to make the investment first, and then you get to see the results. And more often than not, on average, 4 to 1. For every dollar you spend on a program that improves engagement as a way of getting better safety performance, you're going to get back $4 in the return that comes somewhere down the road. Poorly trained managers and supervisors. This is another obstacle. We've launched a lot of programs over the years, safety engagement programs, recognition reward programs, The only place where it won't work is in a place where you have, and I'll say utter disarray with the management team, if you will. I've worked with a company as an example, big distribution company, about 60 different warehouse and distribution centers. And they had a situation where, roughly speaking, it was a third, a third, a third. 20 of those locations had really good managers doing a really good job. 20 of them had managers that were working hard and doing okay, not great, but getting something done. And the other 20 were just in total disarray. They had situations where manager turnover was super high, and employee turnover was super high, and they couldn't get a message through. You can't launch a program into a complete calamity and expect it to work. So you certainly have to solve for that level of dysfunction first. But as long as you have something that's working reasonably well or good, you can make it that much better with a program. So as long as you can get, and you can find at least part of the audience that is engaged enough from a management standpoint to truly launch a program and put some weight behind it, you'll have some success. And that sort of speaks to the last one or nothing, or last one as well. It's not all or nothing, right? So in that situation, we did launch a program for that company. And what we did was we focused first on the 20 that had good management, because we knew they could go even higher and better with safety because the managers were aligned. And then secondly, we began to ease it out the door to that group in the middle and essentially look for hand raisers to jump on board the program, and over a period of time, try to help them find a way to bring the dysfunctional divisions up to speed as well. But the bottom line is, if you're waiting for everything to be perfect before you launch the program, you'll be waiting too long, right? Perfection is the enemy of the good. Okay, another engagement obstacle I mentioned up front here was management support. And I saw from the survey that many of you think you have some support. Only a few of you really think you have total support. And there are plenty of you that don't feel like your managers really understand, or your supervisors, what have you, truly understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And so how do you get over this obstacle? It's the stakeholders. Okay, you're one of them, of course, as the safety head or risk head, but you also have human resources and operations and customer service and sales, and really every other manager in the company has some ancillary need for the same thing you need. You need an engaged workforce in order to make them safer. Your sales department needs an engaged sales force in order to sell more. Okay, your sales department also needs a safer company because it allows them to sell better. I have really large industrial companies that when they go out and pitch business, we've talked to them about this, that they are basically fractions of a point away from their competitors. So they're going to go pitch a really large customer on their wares, and at the end of the day, they have really large competitors that do what they do, and plus or minus, they're about the same company. And when they get down to it, one of the things they talk about is say, well, when we have all of our vehicles and trucks on your property, we'll be the safest company here. Why? Because we're the safest company in our industry, because we've taken on the hard challenges of being an engaged company with an engaged workforce that knows how to work safely on my property and yours. And so even safety can be a differentiator in the selling process. We certainly know that HR cares, right? Talked about turnover here a minute ago. We know how painful that is for human resource managers, nonstop job fairs and spending and training and what have you. And if you gave any HR manager out there a chance to reduce their turnover by 10%, they'd jump at it and they'd save a lot of money doing it. Well, your safety incentive program, okay, that gets your employees more engaged, can be the thing that actually gets them to a lower turnover rate. And so getting them involved in the process, right, as a way to overcome an obstacle, and getting to managers to really explain to them that the department that with the greatest need is the one that actually has to take this objective on. And again, very often that's going to be safety. And here's the other thing I would hit. Here's the other button I would hit to try to get over those obstacles. I mean, I don't call it vanity, call it profitability. Bottom line is, everybody wants to work for a company that makes it onto these lists. Okay, my apologies to ISHN, but EHS has one. I'm sure ISHN does as well. America's safest companies, America's best place to work, America's most innovative companies. You cannot find an executive out there that doesn't want their company on this list. You certainly can't find one that doesn't want to be more profitable. And so if you can get their attention, if you can show them through case studies that the way to get here, best places to work, safest companies to work for, most improved in safety, okay, profitability. The way to get there is to start by dealing with engagement. And again, if you have a company, I see a lot of, again, there's hundreds of companies online here. We can see who they are. I see construction companies, long haul trucking. I see manufacturing companies that have large numbers of safety sensitive workforce need the biggest need, obviously, to reduce turnover is with the safety sensitive crew. And that's going to come by actually engaging with them just to make them safer on the job. Why? They know you care. Okay. The more you care, the more they feel recognized, the more likely they are to stick around. Okay, next poll question. How well do you think you understand OSHA's position? Not sure what that symbol is, but OSHA's position on safety incentive programs. This is you personally. OSHA puts out a ton of information. So does the Department of Labor, for that matter. They take positions on everything and then some. And I'm just wondering if you can sort of search your own thoughts here a little bit. How well do you think you know their position on how they feel about the use of safety incentive programs, recognition reward programs? You guys are engaged. I can tell you what, the answers come in fast and furious. I'm just going to give it another few seconds just so everybody gets a chance to plug in. You see the choices there, everything from I have no understanding of how OSHA feels about incentive programs to I have a great understanding, and a couple levels in between. Okay, that looks good. One more click and then I'll push it. Good. Okay, so of the people that are on the line here, we have everything ranging from 7% saying they really have no understanding to 12% thinking they have a great understanding of it. And of course, everyone else is in the middle. Looking at, I try to bundle things together here. So I'm looking at 45, 52% who think they have either an average understanding, a limited understanding, or no understanding. And I'm very happy to hear that the rest of you feel like you have a good to great understanding of it. It's important. It's important because I can tell you that when you look at barriers, remember, this is still the section of the presentation we're in here, which is obstacles. When you look at obstacles, some of those obstacles are real and some of them are perceived. And I'll take it back. They're all real. The perception of them sometimes are stronger, perhaps, than they should be in other cases. So let's look at OSHA as an example. I have my issues at times with OSHA and how far they try to reach. I've been down to Washington, D.C. I've been at the Department of Labor. I've lobbied on behalf of my industry to OSHA and for our industry and for the work that we do, putting together recognition programs. Anything OSHA has ever done that limits the possibility that a company that needs a safety recognition program has prevented them from doing it. OSHA has done harm to itself, whether it knows it or not. However, by and large, they have worked themselves into a better place on this maybe than they were at some point. There was a point going back to, as I like to call it, your grandfather's safety incentive program before, where every company would put a billboard out front that says 950 days, without an accident. That type of peer pressure inducing mentality, and the whole peer pressure inside of a company where if we have an accident, nobody gets rewarded. OSHA didn't like that. It's for a good reason they didn't like that. They didn't like it because of the negative peer pressure and what it can do in accident hiding, but it's also just a bad program. It's not a good format. Negative peer pressure doesn't work nearly as well as positive reinforcement. And so they, through a lot of input and listening to many companies like ourselves and end users like many other companies on the phone, have worked themselves into a better place. So in the most recent improved tracking of workplace injuries and illnesses record keeping rule that I'm sure many of you have seen, and there's a link to it right there, these are quotes directly from that rule. This rule does not prohibit incentive programs, pretty straightforward. The rule does not ban appropriate incentive programs. The dots in the middle there aren't hiding anything. That was just talking about drug testing and some of the other things that they talk about in the same rule. Employers must not use incentive programs in a way that penalizes workers for reporting work-related injuries and illnesses. Right, you shouldn't. That's not what an incentive program is for. It's not what a recognition program is for. You can fire them, you can penalize them, you can punish them, you can put them on a PIP, you can do any number of things. You can retrain them or just send them packing. That's where you as an employer has the ability to penalize somebody for doing it poorly. Recognition programs are all about recognizing the good behavior as a way of getting more of it. And OSHA's, they're right there. They did enough information gathering to realize they're not against incentive programs. They have to be used for positive reinforcement. And then as it says at the bottom, OSHA recommends incentive programs that reward for worker participation in safety program activities and evaluations, completion of safety training, reporting hazards, near misses, what have you. These are all great things. Conformance to plan, preventative maintenance schedules. Why wouldn't you want to reward somebody for that? Okay, if you want more people to conform to those planned preventative maintenance schedules, and you start recognizing those that do, more will. And that's the way it works. And it goes on, right? I mean, safety suggestions and mentoring new employees and any number of other things. These are the types of things that you can build a recognition reward program around. You can do it to great effect. You can do it to really push the level of engagement in your company. And you can do it, and frankly, I don't ever put a smile on OSHA's face if that's even feasible, but they got nothing bad to say about it because it's built properly and it's meant to target and reward proper behavior. By the way, probably a good opportunity for me to remind you what Dave told you early on. Questions. Take as many questions as you want, send them over. At the end, we should have time to answer anywhere from 3 to 7 or 8 of them, but typically I'll get 50 to 100. Send as many as you want. I will answer every single question in an email directly back to you after the presentation. And and I will also copy everyone on this presentation with those results. So you get to see everybody's question and the answer to it. Okay, so we just talked about obstacles. Now we're going to talk about opportunities. All right. So it's a simple graph, right? It's an X and a Y axis. It's engagement and safety. If engagement goes up, safety goes up. I'd be hard pressed to believe anybody on the phone here today anyone on this webinar doesn't believe that to be true. So how do we do it though? How do we get there? Well, we're going to talk about, this is sort of a sub agenda. So we're going to talk about in the next 7 or 8 slides, putting a brand name on safety, using technology, using wellness programs, recognition. Again, a lot of that's coming through, but I'm just going to hit that slide here again. Tangible awards, communication tools, and then how to be flexible and how to basically make sure you get it right the first time. So first one, opportunities to engage, the power of the brand. I've done an entire webinar just on this topic, and it was equally well attended and very well received. Your safety program needs a brand. It can't be your safety. If your safety program is called your safety program, you missed an opportunity. And the best opportunity to actually put a brand name on it is to create some sort of recognition reward program. Okay, it could be manager on the spot, it could be training, it could be driver training, it could be near miss reporting, it could be safety suggestions, it could be all of the above plus performance. But whatever it's going to be, you take an opportunity where you're going to recognize and reward your workers for doing a great job. And at the same time, we're going to do that, let's put a brand name on it, right? So we're not just going to call it our safety program, we're going to call it Always Safe or Dedicated to Safety or Take Action Rewards or People Safe, right? Once you put a brand name on it, people have more respect for it. Okay, there's a reason why, yes, you can buy a bag of potato chips, a white bag of potato chips that says in black letters potato chips. You can, and some people do. But the reason that 97% of people buy a brand name potato chips is they trust it. They trust it, they believe in it, and it starts to resonate with them and it sticks. And that's exactly what your safety needs. It needs a brand name that can stick. And the way to do that is to launch that brand name in something that has a lot of buzz. Okay, once it's created, your brand name, you're going to want to communicate it like crazy. And that's another one of the benefits here, one of the opportunities we're going to talk about. And you got to make it ubiquitous, right? You got to put it out there. All right, it's one thing to say, we created the brand and we created the program. Let's move on to the next project. You need a way, okay, partners, a partner in particular to help you do this. You need a way to make sure that brand stays out there. Again, raise your hand if you've never heard of Coca-Cola, right? We all heard of Coca-Cola. We've all heard of McDonald's. Here's the point. Coca-Cola continues to advertise because advertising and marketing and communicating its brand makes its brand stronger. And what would be better than having a really good, strong safety brand for your company? Technology. Oh my God, it's everything, right? It's everything from social feeds and networks to mobile devices to tracking devices and what have you. The one thing I can tell you is, because I've seen both sides of this, I see people that just can't wait for the next technology solution, hardware, software, whatever, to come out. And they're looking forward to playing with it and using it and maybe even using it in their work, and including safety professionals. And I've seen plenty of others that just lament the next thing that's going to come out, particularly because, I mean, let's face it, cell phones, if they're even phones anymore, mobile devices are distracting, really distracting, huge safety problems, but they can also be really, really important safety communication tools as well. You don't want people looking at their phones while they're driving a truck, but you don't mind if they get safety messaging sent to them through messaging systems that can allow them to get the right message at the right time, right? And in the lower right-hand corner there, artificial intelligence. I don't know how much you've heard about it. I don't know how much you've read about it, but it's here. It's not coming anymore. It came here with IBM's Watson, was the first real AI platform out there that I'm aware of, and now it's everywhere. And all the big boys, Amazon and Google and Apple and everyone else, are coming out with their own artificial intelligence platforms. And they're going to reinvent every aspect of business over the next 30 years. Prediction of mine. But I can tell you what they're already doing is they're already being used in the Mayo Clinic to predict what's wrong with patients when they come in the door. They're already being used by large law enforcement networks to predict where crime's going to be committed. And if it hasn't already come to a door near you, it will. And what you're going to find out is somebody's going to walk in and tell you that artificial intelligence, using a cognitive reasoning platform, can take all the data that you can give it on your workers, okay? Here's who they are, here's how old they are, Here's how much education they have. Here's how much training we've given them. Here's how long they've been on the job. Take every piece of information you can possibly give them, what area of the country they work in, how hot it is in that area of the country, how many snowstorms they get, and come back to you and tell you where your accidents are likely to happen in the future. Okay, which people specifically are most likely to have those accidents. And how is that going to inform your decisions going forward on your job? I only mention it doesn't really have much to do with this presentation. Frankly, I just find it interesting. I mention it because it is the present, but it's the future or soon to be present. And it actually will have a big impact on everything from recognition programs designed to promote safety to how you do your job. So technology is your friend, embrace it and use it to your benefit. That sort of slides into this just perfectly. If you think about it, technology, I don't know, when did Fitbits come out? 5 years ago? Less? Opportunities to engage also includes wellness. Healthy is safer, as we say here on the slide, right? Safety and wellness go together like PPE and training. They're flip sides of the same coin. Again, anybody who's ever heard me talk before has heard me say that, you know, obesity and sleep apnea and tired driving and accidents are all, it's one straight line, right? And so we know that in mature programs that we have, the most successful mature programs we have, when companies, when we've gotten them from over a number of hurdles and they're becoming much safer on the job, and we start looking for ways to keep moving the needle, we typically go to wellness as the next step in the game. We can engage them better, we can make them healthier, and the healthier are, the safer they are. I won't spend long on this slide because this really just speaks to recognition, and I think I pounded that already. There's another study out there by Human Capital Institute which really talks about 11%. This is sort of your star performers, if you will, your type A personalities as being truly highly engaged people. But this is a graph that sort of on the left-hand side that sort of represents what we've seen in all of our past surveys, and the perceptions of how many people are engaged on the job is always higher, and in years gone by, much higher than the reality of it. And so that nexus really presents the opportunity to improve what's going on in your company. Won't spend long on this one either because I hit it already. Opportunities to engage in terms of, you know, the real positives. Tangible awards, brand name tangible awards. Okay, everybody's heard of Sony on the call. Anybody that's a golfer has heard of Callaway. Everybody's heard of DeWalt if they like power tools. You will have people looking at Maui Jim sunglasses and Callaway golf clubs and Seiko watches and Weber barbecue grills. They will be fixated on what they can earn by being safer on the job, by making a safety suggestion, mentoring a new driver, a new employee, becoming a behind the wheel instructor. All of that collectively makes you a safer company, and all it really costs you to get there was some recognition, maybe a few points and a prize. And it also extends in terms of tangible awards to logoed merchandise and branded campaigns of that such. So here's one on screen that we're showing you, and this is a number of different safety kits that we've produced in the past. Inside these kits are a number of really nice logoed merchandise items, thermal coolers and sunglasses and flashlights and multi-purpose tools and what have you. All of these things carrying the company brand and the brand name of the company's safety program in a kit specifically branded to deliver recognition to that person, so you can see them being handed out at end-of-year safety banquets. Really powerful. These are the people sitting in the audience, are their family and friends and coworkers. Recognition for a safety job well done, delivered in front of your coworkers and family and friends, that much more powerful. Okay, these safety kits, frankly, easy to produce, easy to figure out who gets them, and really powerful stuff. And honestly, again, back in the idea that you need to communicate constantly, we put the brand name all over it, the safety brand name all over it. We hang a poster on the wall. We tell people in July, don't forget, everybody that has a perfectly safe year is going to get a safety kit in January. Powerful, tangible merchandise results. We're still on opportunities to engage the communication imperative. Again, just reinforcing what I've talked about earlier. The message has to get through. Okay, you got to create a good message, you got to create a good brand name, and then the message has to get through, and it needs to be understood. Okay, it needs to be internalized by your workers, which means it needs to be repeated. How do we teach our kids things? We teach them something, and we use repetition to make sure that it sinks in. All communication avenues should be utilized. The next slide speaks to this as well, and the results must be measured. And let me just jump to that next slide. So platforms, again, this is not an exhaustive list. I would need probably 10 slides. You have interactive platforms, you have print, of course, everything you can print, everything from that flashlight you give them when you launch the program, or that travel mug, or whatever it might be, that mouse pad. Take your pick, put the logo on everything you can. It's not that costly, and it does wonders. But then also, in meetings and face-to-face interactions, it needs to be repeated and mentioned. And if you're having a safety meeting, it ought to be hanging on a banner, your safety brand, hanging on a banner behind the presenter. And mobile devices and monitoring tools and what have you. There's all kinds of hardware out there now and software that makes this feasible. Get your safety brand in front of them, keep it in front of them, and attach it to everything positive that's going on in your company, and it'll mean something down the road. It will build on itself. Under opportunities to engage, I thought I'd throw in disruptions, right? So as I say, their disruptions require adjustments. This becomes, and some of these disruptions are positive. Needless to say, a positive disruption can be an opportunity to engage. Some of them are negative, but again, it's a good opportunity, can be a good opportunity to engage. Mergers and acquisitions. We know what happens. Maybe your company just bought a smaller company. Maybe you merged with a parallel company, what have you. Opportunity to take, and I've seen this, we've done it very, very successfully, where I've had two customers merge together, and we put those two brands together and we promote it, and it's been wonderfully received. Maybe a major milestone is reached. We just had a company that we work with just land a huge, hundreds of millions of dollar construction project, bridges and roads. And for them, it's enormous. They're going to go out and hire hundreds of additional employees. It's a great celebration. You use that as an opportunity within your safety program to talk about how much bigger the company is going to get and how diligent they're going to continue to be on the safety front, even as the company rapidly grows. It could be the negative side. Could be an incident occurred, a bad incident. We see all this going on down in Florida right now. Big cranes falling off the top of buildings under construction. Incidents like that are other opportunities to go out and reinforce your safety mantra, your safety brand, and basically reset the clock. So new projects, new deadlines, government regulations that come out of nowhere, PPE requirements, training, what have you. All of these things can be and should be used as a way of furthering your objectives. Okay, and failures need to be studied. Don't waste a disruption. Like I said, never waste a crisis. Find a way to make it part of what you do to make yourself better. And then I think lastly here, and I put this one in for my father. God love the man. He loves cliches and he loves this one, but it's true. Measure twice and cut once, right? And the picture tells the story. Before we go out the door with an engagement program, before we figure out exactly how we're going to take this workforce that's partially engaged and make it more engaged, and how we're going to get them more involved and recognize and reward their behaviors, we need to go out and measure, right? So safety is great for measurement. It's really easy in many ways to measure how many accidents and injuries and severity and how much we spend and claim count and OSHA incident rate. These numbers jump off the page and we see them all day long. But measure the more obscure things as well, like engagement. There's a way to do it. Use the Q12 survey yourself, measure it in your own company, or come up with your own version. Morale. How do you measure morale? Well, there's a way. Ask the right questions and score yourself and see how well you're doing. Retention, turnover, how many people participate in your wellness program, earnings per share, productivity. If you can measure those things as well, you have a great opportunity to cross-pollinate that data with the obvious everyday safety data, and it's amazing what will emerge. And again, this is what can get you comfortably back in front of the CEO, telling him exactly what he needs to do on this side. And as a stat there at the bottom, it's remarkable, actually. Only 22% of companies in general measure their success in these types of programs. It really is, it's just laziness, frankly, or lack of thoroughness, but you need to measure your results in order to make informed decisions about what to do next. As I just said, you need to justify spending. You need to be able to measure what you're getting back. You don't want some executive saying, I didn't think we got much out of that program. Or if they do say that, you want to be able to slap a report right on their desk that said, the more engaged we've gotten, the lower the turnover's been. HR loves that, and our safety has come along with it. And by the way, next year's health insurance bill is going to be smaller because of it, right? You need to be able to show that data to them, and you need to be able to call in the allies you have in the company to get that information accurately in front of them. Better analysis, don't fly blind, right? More complete picture of true cause and effect, right? Again, people get set in their ways. No, our problem, they'll just tell you over and over, our problem is this, our problem is this, our problem is our trucks are too old, right? We don't have a safety problem, we have an equipment problem. Well, do you really? Or do you have an engagement problem relative to your mechanics or workers in general? Expose new opportunities. Again, this is opportunities to engage, talk to those other managers out there, cross-pollinate, as I said a minute ago, and and really focus on the relationship between engagement and safety and earnings per share. And when you walk into that boss's office and try to figure out how to get them to pony up for what you want to do. All right, and lastly, and I think there's 3 slides here left, safety needs to lead. This, you could extrapolate this from everything I just said, but who owns engagement? Well, HR could own it because they need it too, and sales could own it because they need sales, and operations can own it because they want everything working efficiently and what have you. But who owns engagement in the case that we're talking about here, particularly in companies that have a safety sensitive workforce, and particularly in companies that have mostly a safety sensitive workforce? That large construction company I talked about before, oh shoot, at last check, I think they have 900 employees. I think 800 of them are safety sensitive positions. So who needs engagement the most? Safety. And that company, and not just that company, probably yours as well. If you have vehicles on the road and heavy equipment out there and any number of other things like that. So safety manager might own it, but the safety manager can and should go out there and look and find other compatriots on the job that also need it as well, and it will throw in with you. Walk into that operations meeting with the backing of HR manager and yourself and somebody in risk and someone else on customer service, and say, collectively, we need to do this. And you have a much more powerful message. That little cartoon on the right, I use it in every presentation just because I love it. You know how I'm sure the safety chart will be great this month, because this is the morale chart. If morale, engagement, happiness is going up in your company, I can guarantee that you are heading towards a safer work environment. And gravitating towards a total rewards program. This doesn't have to happen. It's not mandatory. Don't get. I don't want anybody on the phone to be like in the webinar to say to themselves, "Oh my God, it's more than we can handle. I can't get to a total rewards program. That's just too much stuff. There's too many moving pieces there." Don't think of it in this holistic of a term. I'm just kind of foreshadowing for you what might come down the road. We have built countless programs for safety and wellness. We built it initially for wellness. We built it initially for safety. And many of those programs now are total rewards programs. Why? Because after we built it for safety, and after it was out the door for a year or two and doing really, really well and driving performance change, the HR manager came through and they wanted to add in wellness or years of service or both, or peer-to-peer or manager spot awards. We've gone so far as to go from all of those areas to customer service, call centers, retention, sales. I mentioned sales earlier. When the sales department started to realize that safety actually was a sales tool for them, we started to get that on board as well. And this graphic on board on this page here that you're looking at here is sort of just showing you, not that you can really understand what you're looking at there, but a very dynamic program. Okay, multiple different communication tools, multiple different objectives, all under one roof for a company that went from a one-dimensional program to a total rewards platform where their employees are truly enveloped in the company's message and goals, including safety, and they're far better off as a result of it. And lastly, and this is really just a summary. So, what did we really talk about here today? And by the way, the next slide is the TV drawing. So get ready, stay engaged. I can look into your eyes. I can tell. Get management on board. Okay, be proactive. Get management on board. Chip away. Find individual allies in your company and start to get them to help carry that water for you, and you'll get there. Create a safety brand, right? When you decide you're going to do it and you want to start showing to people, if you walk into your boss's office and say, I really want to create this great safety program, it's not nearly as powerful as walking in and dropping something in front of him or her that shows a safety brand on exactly what you want to do. Give them the visual, and you'll be much better chance you'll get to where you want to go. And once you've created that brand, protect it. Okay. Create buzz, recognize and reward your workers for what they do. Creating buzz is the best way to go out there and launch a program like this. Again, you need enthusiasm. You need an engaged audience, and you do that by putting out a recognition and reward program. People crave recognition. By the way, going back to the beginning, millennials crave recognition the most. I don't know what it is, something about the way they were raised, but they really need a pat on the back. They do. Maybe they won't for their whole careers, but I can tell you right now they do. And it's not because I say so. Every study out there says exactly this. Millennials in particular, if not people in general, need recognition to feel appreciated and need to feel appreciated. And in particular, in a 4.4% unemployment environment, and particularly where trained workers can easily move right now, you better be recognizing them and creating some enthusiasm around what you're doing, or you're going to lose them. And it hurts to lose them, right? Communicate continuously. I hit this one hard, but once you got it out there, the job's not done. It's got to be continuously communicated. What you're trying to do, what are the goals or objectives? How are we doing against those goals and objectives? What's our safety brand? Activate and empower managers to engage. Face-to-face recognition is most powerful. It can't always be done. Long haul truckers, and there's just any number of situations I've seen over my years where it's not easy to get face-to-face with somebody, and recognition can be delivered in a non-face-to-face environment, and that's still good. But any chance you get to walk up to Jane and tell her she did a great job and hand her some safety points or give her a pat on the back. Those opportunities are gold and should be taken advantage of. And the best way to do it is to make it easy on your managers, easy on your supervisors, easy on the guys in the toolbox talk, to just sit there because you've given them all the tools to say, I want to give a shout out to John, who had the best safety suggestion last month. It's worth his weight in gold. Bring initiatives together under one roof. That's the total rewards platform. That's something you grow into. And start slow, finish strong, make adjustments along the way. Walk before you run. You don't have to do the whole company in one shot. Take one department, one division, and get that going first. And just go at whatever pace you can, but make sure you do a good job with whatever it is you have launched. Okay, so running a little bit long. I do want to get to some Q&A, but first let's figure out who has won our prize. So there it is. It's a Sony 32-inch TV and a Roku streaming stick. Speaking of new technologies, and the winner is. I'm gonna read my notes. First name is Pam, last initial is K, and you are from the company. Do I have this right?
Kimberly Clark.
Oh, first name is Pam, and your last initial is not K. You work at Kimberly Clark. So Pam from Kimberly Clark, congratulations! You just won a 32-inch TV and a Roku stick, and we will contact you after the webinar to figure out how to get that to you. And with that, I will hand it back over to Dave, who will get to at least a few questions while we have some time.
Well, thanks a lot, Brian, for a really excellent presentation on what has got to be one of the most popular topics in safety today. And we do have a nice, healthy list of questions. So let's get to them. Let me get myself in front of the camera here. Okay. First question, Brian. Somebody wants to know. Okay, we have one in the audience. What do you do, Brian, about a hardened union fellow buying into safety programs? And I'm sure you've had experience not only with union people, but with others who are just, resistant for one reason or another.
Sure.
To getting involved, getting engaged.
Sure. Well, okay, so I make the effort. I mean, I would encourage my customers or anybody I was talking to make the effort. So making the effort is maybe this hardened union fellow, first of all, he may be unreachable. I mean, the first thing I got to say is this: you don't get 100%. Who could promise that, right? So you're not necessarily going to get 100% of your workforce to truly to buy into this. But I can tell you what, if you got 50%, you'd have a fantastically successful program, and you can get a lot more than that. So one is you may not get them, but two is try. And he or she may have seen over the years a great many half-hearted attempts to create engagement and recognition on the job, and maybe disheartened by those. And frankly, that might be part of the reason, or the reason that he or she is jaded. And when you come forward with what I've just described, okay, a real solution with weight behind it, with muscle behind it, with a brand behind it, with promotion behind it, there's a chance you'll take that hardened union fellow and get him to say, this one's different. I can feel this one, it's different. And the recognition that he receives and the opportunities he gets to get rewarded make him come around. If he doesn't, live to fight another day, I guess I would say. If you don't get that guy, but you get 75% of his coworkers, you still got a great program.
Okay. Another optical question, Brian. This attendee wants to know, how do we build trust when the company is constantly reorganizing, as you've talked about, mergers, acquisitions, disruptions, and the employees do not end up trusting upper management because of all the changes?
Yeah,
well, I mean, engagement in that situation.
Well, sure. Again, I've gone through mergers and acquisitions. My customers have gone through mergers and acquisitions, and we've been there holding their hand right through it. I would tell you that a really good recognition program can be the thread that connects the company from before to after the event: merger, acquisition, change, management. Maybe there's been layoffs, what have you. The one thing that can help make that, I guess, ease the blow, if you will, is a good recognition program. So maybe the company just went through and did layoffs, but if it did layoffs, okay, and still found a way to keep engaged with their employees and the people that are still on the job, and make sure that they understand that you're our most valuable asset. You're here all companies have to go through cost-cutting measures, but it didn't stop us, the company, from still wanting to recognize you as an outstanding performer who's making us a better place to work. That will do something for you. It really will. Again, through mergers that we've seen before, it's been that thread where when you bring the recognition reward program from the company that has it to the other company that didn't have it before, they were wide-eyed. They couldn't believe that something like this existed because they had nothing like it before. And the safety incentive program that we had for one in particular just really helped soften the blow after that type of transition. I mean, if you think about it, it is one of the arrows in the quiver, right? It's a tool that can be used specifically to smooth out those bumps in the road.
What about safety cultures? A lot of talk about safety cultures today, as you well know, Brian. This attendee, what would your thoughts? This is more of a statement than a question. This attendee says safety incentives just won't work if there is no safety culture in the organization.
I would modify that statement to say, I would agree with that statement, but I would modify it probably to say this: a safety recognition program is a great way to build a safety culture. So don't get me wrong, I don't know this person's specific situation, and if I did, I might come at this a little bit differently. If their company, this person who made this comment, has a company that is in utter disarray, as I mentioned earlier, if they're just bad, I mean, wrong equipment, poor training, poor managers, no follow through, take your pick. If they're that bad off, sure, there's other things they need to fix first. But assuming it's not that dire and they just don't have a good culture, you take a program with buzz, with heat, okay, with energy in it, okay, one where people are getting pats on the back and being rewarded and receiving actual rewards for what they're doing, and you get to see that the best performers are the ones that are getting that recognition and reward, and everybody wants to follow that through. And now you take the company's mantra. Every company has 5 core values or 6 things they want to focus on, what have you. Start to build your culture around that and reward within your recognition program around that culture, around those specific objectives, and you'll get there. You won't get there overnight, but survey your people before you start this program, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say, how good is our safety culture? And you'll find out that your underperforming safety culture comes in at a 61. Survey them 6 months or a year later, and you're going to find out, with this program out there properly deployed, you're at a 68. And a couple of years down the road, your safety culture is rating at 83. Okay, that type of measurable progress, not the kind of thing you think about measuring, but that kind of measurable progress goes right back to that chart I showed earlier, where I know the safety numbers are going to be good because we're scoring 20 percentage points higher than we did a year ago or 2 years ago on our safety culture. And we got there by giving a shout out where it was needed, more often than not, to the people that are making us safer on the job.
Okay. Speaking of data, this question, Brian, are you aware of any data on what the single biggest obstacle to engagement? You talked about a variety of obstacles. Single biggest obstacle to engagement in organizations across the board. Is there one?
Yeah, I think the most common one that I hear is, we talked about management support and what have you, and all that's true. Although in many cases their managers will support it, but will come back and say, I support it, but don't do anything that slows us down. And that's a paraphrase, right? So it can't be cumbersome for the manager to deliver. We can't. We don't want to. I should say this. We don't want to get our managers are busy. Our supervisors are busy. They have a lot to do. So sure, we're all for engagement and a safer workforce, but don't hand me a program that's going to require them to do anything. I mean, and we can build programs that minimize at the greatest level possible how much effort somebody has to put into it. But I'm not going to lie to you, somebody has to do something. Okay, you're not going to have a better safety culture and have a more engaged workforce and never once ask a shift supervisor to hand out a safety award or give out recognition at a toolbox talk, right? You're going to require something of them. And I think it's anytime, I'd say the most common thread is that companies are fearful that if they ask their line level managers and shift supervisors and what have you to foremen, if you will, to do anything, they're hindering their job. That's not looking at the forest for the trees, because obviously what we're shooting for is this: that shift manager, that supervisor has a challenge. Safety is a challenge, and it slows him or her down, and it causes problems, and it costs the company money. So even if I slow them down just a bit to give them an easy way to recognize somebody for making the best suggestion or making a near miss report, even though I've slowed them a brief moment, in that moment, I've overall improved their performance. But that's the perception. Again, you got to get somebody to buy into the return on investment.
Well, that's all the time we have for questions, Brian. There are some still left in the queue, and as you mentioned, you'll be answering all the questions, and everyone will be able to get a chance to see your answers to all the questions. There were still some good questions in the queue. So now, please join me again in thanking Brian Galonick for a very well thought out presentation based on a lot of experience, as well as our sponsor, All-Star Incentive Marketing. If you have any additional questions or comments, don't hesitate to click the Email Us button on the console. And as you exit today's webinar, take a couple of minutes to complete our survey. We strongly welcome detailed comments, and visit webinars.ishn.com for the archive of Brian's presentation today, as well as information about our upcoming webinars. Again, we certainly appreciate you spending time with us and Brian this afternoon, and hope you have found his webinar on engagement to be a valuable experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.